order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of February 17th, 2021 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the February meeting? If we have, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, Matt.
Motion by Mr. Smith to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Don't know who that was.
Adam.
Adam, thank you, Adam. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the Clean Correct Collaborative. And I believe this is going to be by Mr. Lush.
Yep. I just want to give an update. Maybe some people have heard about the Clean Collaborative, on Facebook or on the news or just word of mouth. I just want to kind of explain what it is, what we're doing, just a few of it. So earlier this year, Metro Council approved some funding to do several things. One of them, for example, is hire a crew of 12 that we're calling our Clean Collaborative crew. And their efforts are going to be focused on collecting litter on established routes throughout Louisville Metro. And we're also going to conduct, periodical litter assessment surveys to assess the level of cleanliness based on Keep America Beautiful scale. We did our first one February 27th. We're hoping to do another one for the downtown area this weekend, if we're able to do that. Some of the other areas, we're putting funding down towards the downtown to help with the downtown partnership and collecting litter down there. We're looking at, working with the state on the interstates. I'm sure any of you driven the interstates and you've seen the condition of that. With the state maintains it during mowing season. Outside of that, they really don't go pick up too much litter. So we're working on that. They going through some contract negotiations right now. Otherwise, they would have been out there already. So we're hoping to get that straightened out soon. Our Clean Collaborative crew, though, they're moving through quite a bit. What we're going to do is have a map that's viewable to the public at some point, and you would be able to go on there and click certain routes and see when we went through, how much litter we collected. For example, last week, the crew cleaned 84 curb miles and got quite a bit of weight. It was about 27 tons of weight off the roadway. So that's not counting just litter. That's, vehicle parts. They said they got a bunch of car doors off the road, bumpers, semi-tires. It's quite a bit. For example, they did the green belt was one portion of what they did. And they got probably 250 bags of litter just off that stretch of roadway. So we got a lot that we're working towards. We're going to start trying to do, as the name says, collaborative. We're going to try to bring in other organizations. We're looking at, outreach programs. We're looking at bringing in other groups, stakeholders in the future right now, just trying to get our feet underneath of us, figure out the next move and go from there.
Rob, is this something that you put out on the web, some type of report?
Yeah, so what we're doing, we do plan on making a website where we'll have a report there. What we're doing currently is putting it in the Public Works Week. If anybody receives that, for example, it went out earlier. And if you pull that up, you'll be able to see what routes the crew worked on. For each route, you'll be able to see the mileage. Karen, are you able to pull that up real quick?
Yeah, we can send that to you all if you're not on it. Rob, let's just make it a point to send it to the advisory committee as well as the board on a regular basis, just so they have that. That'd be easy. Is that okay?
Yep.
Good. Any questions from any of the committee members?
No.
Anything else you'd like to add, Rob?
I just look for, I think we'll be working with the advisory and the board quite a bit in the future. Especially when we're looking at stakeholders that are involved with the cleanliness of Louisville Metro. So we'll still be working together. So.
Hey, Rob, this is Brian. I had a question. Where are the employees from that are doing that? Are they inside Metro or?
They're Metro employees with
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were existing employees, not new?
No, they're new.
Yeah, they're new. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that funding, the funding, for example, I think vacant lots were able to hire additional crews to help with the mowings and all that throughout the year. And then we were able to hire, at the moment, we got 12 laborers and a supervisor for the Clean Collaborative crew.
Yeah, that was quite a record that you collected. I'm impressed with that. Do they use Metro equipment or did you have to acquire new equipment for that?
It's Metro equipment. We part of that funding was being able to purchase more equipment for them.
Okay.
And this also includes contracts, as you talk about that, Mr. Slade, contracts with the state. Again,
Yes, sir.
we piggyback off that contract when it comes to cleaning up the expressways.
Yep.
We got funding for that. Remember, the Waste Management District cleans up twice a year anyway.
Right.
In February and December, and then we added some more. The goal right now is to get two more. We added 2 more cleanings between now and June. February got away from us because of the contract issue. So March will be done with what we're paying for out of the division, and then we'll do another one in June. We'll do another one in June before the fiscal year ends. It will be paid for out of the division money.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. We need it in the area, so I'm impressed with that. I'm a supporter.
Yeah, it's something that was definitely needed. We used to be able to take out inmates, and COVID came out and kind of ruined that. So this is, we're a lot more consistent. We'll have, we've got these routes that are scheduled. What I mean by schedule, we don't have. I can't come out and tell you right now we're going to be in a certain area, next week. We're still figuring that out. But we have, these established routes that these crews will be working on. So we're hoping that it's going to really make a difference. There's future projects we're going to have to work towards, as I said, outreach, such as, education, a broader litter campaign. So there's quite a bit that we want to do, but this is definitely a step in the right direction, I think.
Rob, is it something that we could show them, maybe the assessment
Yep.
that we completed? Is that something that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll show you 2 things. One is just, the first one's assessment. So these are the routes that we did our first litter assessment on. As you see, the darker color is going to be the most littered routes according to the scores. As it gets lighter in color, it's less debris and less litter. And so you can see from that, our crew's got quite a bit of routes that they're going to initially be working on. And these routes can change in the future. After we do make our first round through them, we'll probably go through and assess them again. And then we can look at, making some changes, adding some routes to it, removing some, just as we see the needs are, we can make those adjustments. You can go through here and you can see we broke it down in a smaller section, so when it came to assessing, you could get a much more accurate representation of it. So, for example, on this stretch of Cane Run from Kramer's Lane to New Lindsay Drive, they rated it as a 4, and they could put what they felt was causing it: vehicles, foot traffic. So that's what we got on that. And as I was talking about the map that we're going to have public, at some point, you can kind of see what we're working with. They're slowly making their way through there, through the routes. And as you can see, we so far 212 curb miles that they've done, 1.5, 1,500 bags of litter so far, and so on. We're still having some issues. That's why it's not public. We're still working out some kinks on it. We're hoping to include, in the future, bright side cleanups. We can represent, those on these maps. Interstate cleanups. We're looking at all of it. So.
Question?
Yeah.
What's going on in Portland? Did you assess more streets, or do we still have a serious problem with dumping going on there, or both?
We haven't assessed them yet. Like I said, we did our first one. Our first assessment was what you see here.
I think I know. I hear what you're saying. We end up doing some cleaning up this weekend in that area. That's what you see.
Okay.
That's what those are. We had additional crews out on the weekend, and we'll be assessing that area as well. But we wanted to be sure to have crews out on the weekend as well, doing some more area cleanup that we know is in bad shape. We'll go back and assess it. This will be an ongoing process of assessing and cleaning and assessing.
Thank you.
So as Keith said, the green lines on this map are where we've cleaned so far.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just want to say, I think that litter has got to be a downer for the people who live near that, and I appreciate anything we can do to clean up.
I concur, and I think your efforts will help us get back to the state we were pre-COVID. I think in every major metropolitan area, COVID has had an impact on litter control, and I commend you for your efforts, Rob. Nice work.
Appreciate it.
And I'm assuming you'd like to get better than pre-COVID, eh?
Yeah, that's our goal. We're hoping that there'll be, as one of the things that we always hear, and why I think this map is going to be good to make public. One thing we always hear is that the city only cleans up around Derby time. And, that's not the case. That's just when people are the most visible. It's kind of all hands on deck. So I think that having this and showing people what exactly is happening is going to be huge. And I think that when people start seeing, that their area is getting cleaned up, maybe that pride will be reinstated for them in their community, and maybe they'll start it as well. More neighborhood cleanups on their own and so forth. So,
Is there any vehicle that you take out when you do the cleanup that would be suitable for a sign that encourage people not to add to the problem?
Yeah, that's something that we're looking at on the on the equipment and the vehicles that we purchased is doing a wrap on those vehicles, so that one, to kind of distinguish the crew from any other one, but also just to get that branding and messaging out. So that's something that we're working on now.
Good.
Rob also shared with them the other components of this clean collaborative, because it is comprehensive in nature when it comes to construction issues as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that the idea of the cleanliness effort is much more than just litter. It's going to be, as I said, vacant lots. They hired more crews to deal with mowings. We're also looking at how often do you see after a construction site is finished up, the cones are still left there, the signs are still left there. We're going to try to work on a plan to figure out a better way to deal with that. Everything to, the markings on the sidewalk. When they come through, like when there is going to be work, for example, on a sidewalk. Often, if you walk downtown, you see the orange and green and blue, spray paints everywhere on the sidewalk and the street. that's something we're going to look at to try to figure out, pressure washing. But not just that, we're going to try to contact these people and say, well, what paints are you using? Can the crews that are doing that construction not remove it? Can they remove it when it's complete? Graffiti. That's something that we're going to look at as well. So it's a broad kind of plan that we're looking at.
Having spent a lot of my career in construction, I should say that a lot of tradespeople genuinely believe it's the laborer's problem to clean up the job at the end of the day. They just throw things on the ground because they think that's their job. And, maybe if we find a way to dispel that. And then the other comment is the BUD system has hired a new contractor to do all those markings. So maybe we need to go to the BUD people and get them to specify what sort of paint to use, because otherwise, every time they change a contract, you'll have to start over.
Yeah, that's all stuff we're going to, even as you said, the one person thinks it's another person's job to clean up. And you see that with vehicle accidents. How often are you driving through and you still see the bumper?
Yep.
Fenders laying on the side of the interstates and the roadway. So, we're going to look at, for example, gas stations, Walmart, Kroger's. How often do you go through and see, the parking lot just heavily littered? There's some areas that, some of these businesses, their property is worse off than the street and sidewalks in front of it. A lot of the trash that does end up in front of them is coming from their businesses. So,
or their dumpsters are never closed.
That's right. Yeah. They don't have large enough dumpsters. It's a whole broad. There's a lot to it. So it's going to be a long process. Lots going to go into it. We'll work on it all and see what we can do and try to bring all these organizations together and work towards a common goal with it.
Very good. Thank you, Rob. I believe the next item on the agenda, would that be you, Karen, with the 109 report, or is that Pete?
I think Pete's going to have a board report. Pete, I didn't see any slides specific to that, so right?
Well, I thought that there should have been, but let me.
It was still just said a blank 109 board report.
Can you pull it up?
I can pull it up, but it's blank.
There's nothing there at all. Okay. Well, hang on just a minute then. Okay, let me jump over. There's really not much to it, to be honest with you, but I just kind of wanted to talk about it. So as you can see here, these were the main topics that took place at the 109 board. Action items was the state annual report and litter abatement certification, because we do use litter abatement funds. At a public anti-litter campaign, education campaign, and then we talked about recycle cart grants and updates. What I was planning on doing is jumping into this this spreadsheet, so not spreadsheet, but this presentation. So can you guys see the it says recycling commodities on here? Is that what's up? Okay, so I was going to talk a little bit about the annual report, and then one of the things that the board asked for the committee to take a look at. But I was going to run through some of the numbers. Obviously, not going to cover the entire annual report. That would be just a bit too much. But as everybody knows, through the annual report, in the waste district, we license a lot of facilities, recyclers, disposal facilities and such. And as part of that, we end up getting all these reports at the end of the year. And we add these up, and then we have to report these to the state in this annual report. This slide here is showing the main commodities that we're collecting and a little bit of a history over the last 4 years. We actually have these numbers going back to probably in the 1990s. They've changed a bit, but the numbers are there. So as you can see in 2020, we pretty much held steady on a lot of stuff. During a year of COVID, we had some differences. One was residential, commercial, non-ferrous, and ferrous seemed to have a pretty big drop. I'm not really understanding exactly why. That's something that we will try to figure out, but whether that was business related, because there was less business for a good portion of the year, or if there's something fundamentally changing in the business. I suspect that part of this was COVID. Commercial single stream was obviously down. That was definitely COVID related because businesses shut down and people went to the curb. So all your waste shifted at that point. So you would see a little bit of that. And as part of that, you also saw that residential single stream increase. So that would have been what we expected. So these are the commodities that we looked at, that we reported in that annual report. This is some of the beneficial use materials that we also reported. I don't have the years on there, but it's the same years, 2017 to 2020 is on the far right. And then there was one that was mixed construction and demolition materials beneficially used. That was one that was discussed as to how we would count that in the annual report. That is material that is actually being used slightly different than what we've ever had before, which is in an agreed order facility. The agreed order is that the facility needs to be closed, and as part of that, they can use mixed construction and demolition in a beneficially manner to do that. So the board ended up deciding that we would count that as diversion. We also keep our recycling and diversion rates. This one is, there's two different ones here. First, the residential, commercial recycling tons, and this is what's picked up at the curb. It's what's dropped off at certain recycling facilities. It's what businesses collect in dumpsters. So that's what you see there. And right now, that rate was 25% for 2020, which is actually a significant drop from 2017. We've been trending lower for a little bit. Part of that could not necessarily be a big drop in recycling, but a increase in disposal. So you have to look at this thing in both ways. So the second one is all sectors, which includes beneficially used material, and that'll include a lot of C&D type material and or beneficial use material that's kind of used that way. And that jumps us up to about 50%. And we've been kind of holding steady around that 50% mark for quite a few years. But 50% diversion is a really a good rate. When you think about if we've been doing this for 25 years, diverting 50% of waste, how much has recycling saved in disposal space? So, when you look at whether we're doing something successfully, that's one measure of that. This is what we track it actually on a rolling average. Let me switch this to, I don't know if everybody can see that well enough. Hope that's better. We also keep it on a 4-year rolling average. And you can still see that trend of residential commercial, which is the top one, which was at 27.1, 2015 to 2017, is now down to 26.2. If we continue to trend the way we are, this is going to start to drop fairly significantly in the coming time. But the reason that we went to a 4-year rolling average as another way to measure this is to smooth out big jumps due to commodity changes or due to conditions in the community, disasters, you name it, COVID. So we did this so that we can kind of get a slower idea, because we could be up and down on any given year otherwise.
Question?
Mhm.
I'm not following the difference between these two sets of numbers unless the first one is recycling and the second one is diversion, and it's the only difference is yard waste?
No, you're right. The slide isn't labeled the way it should be. The first one is the residential commercial recycling rate. The second one is the overall diversion rate.
Okay. Well, where is yard waste then?
It's incorporated into these numbers. Yes.
Okay.
We also keep track of the individual curbside rate. This tells us exactly what we're doing in carts. This is predominantly what the community and residential customers are doing. So this is another way that we look at how we're performing. Right now, the overall county rate from curbside recycling and yard waste is 17.4%, and 7.3% for recycling and 10% for yard waste. Those rates are actually pretty low when you consider, what we need to be doing. And I think that this area is one area where you can compare us a lot to other cities, which do have a much higher rate.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
Since you have made the haulers anonymous, could you insert there the fees for recycling and for yard waste so that we could see if there's a correlation between the fee and the participation rate? We could assume it, but I think it would be better to see the numbers.
I will in another slide, but I think that comes into where we're at, what the board's ask is going to be. What I will tell you is that when you see a curbside diversion rate of 3%, and then one that's 20.4% or 23.1, a lot of that where you have more contracts tend to be higher diversion. The hauler number 2 is primarily a unincorporated area where individuals have to subscribe individually to the hauler, and it's offered. It's not something that's offered as part of a service. So you have generally a whole lot less people utilizing that. So that's why that is much lower. This is let me do this one first before I get into the other one. This is the curbside services participation and availability rate. This is people that we think have service, and how many people have it. So 98.6 is actually a pretty good. Our goal is 100%, obviously, because garbage service is important. But when you start to talk about 300 something households, that small percentage that don't can cause a lot of problems. And that increases your illegal dumping. It increases code violations where you have trash building up on properties and such. Some of that could be that the census statistics haven't kept up with what's being reported. So we have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. Now, households with recycling is about 40%. Households with yard waste services is about 37%. Obviously, we would want to see those numbers much higher. And this is the variable rate service pricing. And this kind of leads into your question, Sarah Lynn. And you can see that in hauler number 2 that had such the high, or excuse me, the low recycling and rates for recycling and yard waste, the price for that is generally much higher.
Is this
Some
per
of that,
month or per week?
this is per month.
Okay.
Some of that is, just related to the fact that houses are a little bit further apart, which costs more money to service. Some of it is based upon a unorganized collection system versus an organized collection system, where you can have up to 3 or 4 or 5 haulers on the same street. Some of it can be that. Now, one of the things that was brought up at the 109 board was, are we truly reflecting all of the different variables into these prices? And an example of that was that some of these households have backdoor service. So if you have backdoor service, it's obviously more expensive. We don't have that really. We're not looking at that here. We're looking at their average rate. But whether that should be footnoted or what variables there are that should be footnoted, or are we asking the right questions, is something that the board requested that the advisory committee take a look at. So I think right now is not the time to do that. I think that's something that the committee needs to take up, how they want to take it up. But they really just kind of want to take the committee to take a better look at this so that we can make sure that we're representing the numbers the way that they should be represented. Any questions on those items? Nope. Okay. Obviously, there was the education report that's part of the thing.
Actually, I do have a question, please.
Okay.
Go back, maybe forward one, not the next one. So hauler number 6. This way. Yes, does hauler number 6 not offer recycling and yard waste, or is it included? I'm betting they don't offer it.
Hauler number 6 is brand new, and they didn't either report it or they're not doing it. It's something that we need to get with them on.
Because they're required, correct?
It's required to be offered.
Okay.
Recycling and yard waste is required to be offered. Can't deny those services.
Thank you.
I don't know if everybody realizes it, but the Waste District does receive grant funds each year for litter collection. Last year was a tough year. This is what we did last year. But we typically do this with inmates. We didn't have them for 3/4, 80% of the year. So it was a difficult year. And we just have to show in the grant and certify that we spent those funds on litter abatement. So that we just have to make that certification. And then the last thing that we brought to the board was that we want to do an anti-litter education campaign to go with the clean collaborative that has taken place. I think that we want to take advantage of that. We're not real sure what that looks like. We have a member of the board, Carl Braisley, who is in this line of work. And after the meeting, we have went back and had a discussion with Carl so that we know what we should be doing. And we met with him and he has some great ideas. So we may be kind of backing up a little bit, but I think everybody would agree that, we're not necessarily going to be able to clean our way into having a clean city. It's got to include some education and outreach. So we went to the board in an ask that, hey, can the board consider doing something with this? And the board has said that they are definitely interested. And they did put up an up to number. As long as we come back to them and say, this is what we plan to do. But after we've talked with Carl, we might be backing up just a little bit. So anyway, just something that you guys should know that from the board report, that is something that's being discussed. And that would, the only other thing we talked a little bit about was the recycle cart grant, which I will tell you that those funds have been approved by the Metro Council. The grants have been approved by Metro Council. The Waste District helped fund $280,000 in matching funds that we wouldn't have been able to do it without them, without the district. So it was a really good thing. We intend to start education and deployment of carts by the last part of May, with the goal of hitting and starting every other week recycling, everybody having their cart by July 12th. But we're working towards that. I will tell you that we are switching the lids to blue to more coincide with the national standard for recycling. And that is the 109 board report.
What are you switching lids to?
Blue.
Blue?
There's something you're muted. There you go.
What are the lids going to be?
Blue.
Orange.
Color blue.
Okay.
But only in the urban services district, correct?
That is correct.
Are there any questions from committee members? Hearing none, thank you, Pete. And we can move on to the subcommittee reports. Ms. Leonard, I believe the first is the Presidential and C&D Subcommittee. Do you want to give us kind of an overview?
Essentially, what we've done is continue with the things that we did last time. We had asked for some additional information in regard to leads, a few other things, and the staff brought that back to us, and there are still additional things that we'd like to know. We have not made any definitive recommendations in regard to anything. We're still in the fact-finding process.
All right. Anyone else on that subcommittee have any comments?
Which initiative are y'all working on?
I'm sorry, Sarah Lynn.
Which initiative are y'all working on, Sandra? Are you still just deciding which one?
Yeah, we have not specified a particular initiative quite at the moment. We're close, but we're not there yet.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, with that, thank you, Sandra. Now, Greg, do you want to give an overview on the ICI self-haul?
I'll try. Yeah. Okay. We had a good discussion for over an hour. We actually went over the hour. We had to cut it off a little bit, but we did a lot of talk about what the self-haul disposal facilities actually are and who they are. And then are we going to have like countywide service level standards for them? And there was debate. And then there was Then there was debate about, whether we would want to standardize or not standardize, and whether they would be a person there at all times or not. So we didn't really come up with any answers for that stuff. But then we talked a little bit about the requirement to have bins or not have bins, and whether there would be a person there, like I said. So bottom line is we haven't picked an actual topic that we're going to do yet. Staff is going to come back with us again for a little bit, couple of answers that we had, and we're just going to keep proceeding as best we can. And I invite anybody else to add to that. Bruce, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Adam, were you going to look into the asphalt shingle recycling bit with the asphalt providers? And now you're pulling my stunt. You're muted as well.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I did meet with Gary Getz with Asphalt Supply and talk to him a little bit more about shingle recycling and limitations and things like that. I do have some other ideas regarding that. Mixed design, I think, is going to be a big component in utilizing more shingles in the asphalt mix. I think that how we can change mix design and put that different mix designs into bids for state and local jobs could be a big factor in getting a whole lot more shingles recycled. But I do still have quite a few questions on how that process can take place.
When you say mixed design, are you talking about utilization of shingles and base coat? And then obviously top coat would be regular asphalt?
Yeah, so the way I understand is that a lot of times when the city, whomever releases a contract to pave a street or to pave a road or to pave anything, they have a certain mix design as far as how much certain materials are put in order to make that asphalt, in order to how much rock, how much sand, how much liquid AC, how much of all the different components that go into making hot mix asphalt, that design into making, because they can vary a lot of those components in different ways and still come up with a hot mix asphalt. But being able to dictate that to them a little bit and maybe even requiring a certain percentage of shingles to go into that mix design, I think could really facilitate a lot more shingles getting recycled. But they did also mention, or they had some negative aspects to using hot mix asphalt that does have shingles in it. One of them they said was it is a little harder to work with. It cools off faster, which doesn't allow it to be worked with quite as easy. They said there's an odor component to it that a lot of the guys laying the asphalt didn't like. So I think there still are obstacles to overcome in the mix design and in things like that we would probably need to get those stakeholders or those asphalt companies on board with, or make sure that we're not wanting them to do something that they don't agree with or can't do. But I do think the potential's there. It's just a matter of how can we not necessarily force, but somewhat force them to use shingles in the mix design that they're going to use for certain projects.
So I think the term you're looking for is bidding specifications. And bidding specifications usually have a scoring algorithm or regimen, rubric, whatever. And you can either say the specification is you have to include shingles, or it can say you get 5 extra points if you include X percentage of shingles in lieu of Y percentage of whatever, aggregate or something. I think that's commonly done. And we just agreed we'd have to settle on the details.
Yeah, and
Actually,
it could be something like that to where you don't have to put them in there, but if you do, you can receive this benefit or something like that. So, like I said, it's just coming down to how we can facilitate that process to make it worthwhile to them for a little bit of, it's definitely, I think, some inconvenience from the asphalt producer to put the shingles in there if there's not a financial gain by using them.
And,
actually, I'd like to make two observations. One is I've been told that in the state of Kentucky, there have been 2 pilot programs. I don't know any more than this that have related to the use of shingles in asphalt. The second thing is when we go out to bid, because we just completed ours, what we're doing, because the lack of sophistication is not where you are, Sarah Lynn. And so we relate to what the asphalt requirements are from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. So it sounds to me like we also need to have some kind of input from the level of the state. Just making a mandate here in Jefferson County might not be the most successful approach.
Mm-hmm. Well, the only other thing I want to add is that in the real world of the public sector, if you can get 5 points, it could be a tiebreaker to getting the contract. And if you give them 10 points, it's going to be a tiebreaker.
Adam,
That depends on whose contract. I think that most people are looking at price first.
Yeah, it's all how you write those bidding specifications, though. I mean, if you make price be worth, say, 50% of the points, and 10% is whether you have asphalt, and 25% is the level of your bonding. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of things. If you do that, then 10% is a tiebreaker. If you make cost be 95%, it might not be sufficient. Yeah.
Adam, did your gentleman discuss any kind of a price difference to lay it with asphalt versus not?
He said that I asked him about trying to use just small percentages of shingles, so much to where you could just you could throw it in there without it negatively affecting your mix as much. And he made it seem like if you don't put enough percentage in there, it doesn't make it worth it at all. Or it makes it so much more of a hassle than it's worth to them to produce it in that fashion. He said, now when you get up to 3% or something like that, then you'll see some cost savings by using that amount, but then you get into, like I said, some more difficulty in working with that mix. I definitely could use more information or.
Did I stop or did everybody else stop?
No, he stopped.
I think just Adam.
Okay.
I was concerned. It looked like everybody was frozen for a second.
We were all stunned. There is a question in the chat while we wait for Adam. Would waste shingle integration reduce the embodied carbon content of asphalt?
I should think so.
Why do you think so? Because aren't we talking about asphalt shingles?
Well, I think the reason I would say so is because it's replacing something else that has a carbon content. And so if you don't have to go out and come up with it, because you're using some reused material, then you should be able to reduce the, and really I'm focused more on how do you get there. The end product might be about the same, but the process of getting the end product should be more energy efficient and therefore have less carbon in it.
Is he back?
Yeah, am I back?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that.
You're good. So I had a question, and maybe something that we should look at. Sandra discussed that there had been two pilots that utilized shingles, and I believe one of those might have been Jefferson County. I'm wondering, in your discussion, Sandra, did they give you any results? Because I know that they've been doing this with rubberized asphalt from tires as well. But the road hasn't been down there long enough for them to come to a conclusion yet. I think the verdict is still out on the durability of the road.
How long has it been down there, do you think?
It probably hasn't been down more than 8-9 years. I'm not sure the lifespan of a road, but I would think that it would be more than that.
Well, it depends on where it is and what it's
Yeah.
subjected to.
I'm sure there's a huge number of variables, and it would probably the sites that they chose were chosen based upon some of those variables.
I'm sorry I lost you all there for a second again. But I do feel like it's in the subcommittee, even there's just a lot more discussion to be had on this topic. And I'm trying to gather as much information as I possibly can to relay to you all to make a good decision on this in the future. But I do think there's quite a few more details that need ironed out, and a lot more discussion.
Shingles are a good diversion material. It's heavy.
It's real heavy, a lot of weight. There is a huge amount of shingles that could be recycled that at this point are not. I think it's definitely something that would be very beneficial to continue to look into.
Awesome.
Thank you for working on that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'll continue it further. It's going to take me just a little bit to gather all
One
the
of the
information.
questions that I had in the use of shingles was whether or not there was any preliminary work that needed to be done before they were incorporated into the mix. Whether they're just flat put in there the way they end up after
no.
being.
No, they have to be run through a grinder, a shingle
That's-
grinder, and it grinds them
Okay.
into a very fine, almost like a powder. And then that's what's introduced into the mix of the asphalt. And there's a lot that goes into recycling, getting that clean, getting the nails out, getting the shingle guys that are bringing them in to keep their trash out of it. There's a large process to that also. Just to get that material ready to go to the asphalt plant is significant.
There's a boatload of
interesting
diesel
thinking.
fuel that's spent to get to that portion too.
Yeah. To
On
grind, I
what,
mean,
hauling or the cleaning it up?
like shingle
But more
grinding.
so in the grinding
Yeah,
and reducing it down to that size.
yeah.
It's one of the most abrasive, gooeyest, hardest things you can ever run through a grinder.
Yeah. Constant maintenance on the grinder. I mean, it's a difficult process.
Well, Adam, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the committee for the investigation you've done thus far, and look
Yep.
forward to any additional information you can bring
Yeah,
to us.
like I said, it's something I'd definitely like to continue to work on through subcommittee and update this committee. And I think we'll continue to progress on that.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Adam? Hearing none, we can move on to the staff report. Karen, are you the education update person?
Yes, we have kind of something that got a little bit vague in between whether it's subcommittee report or staff report, but both subcommittees individually have asked for understanding what the staff has been doing and is currently doing that kind of aligns and goes along with the recommendations from the study. So, so Pete has, and I have, we kind of have a dual presentation here to kind of share with you all a little bit of that. We thought it would be easier to share on this level because that way, you know, everybody kind of hears it all at once. So I'll start, Pete, if that's okay with you. I was supposed to share in the residential C&D subcommittee last week, and we ran out of time. But they had asked specifically to kind of understand, like, we already had one recommendation that had been approved by the board to go to design phase, but we really didn't do anything past that. So, so the subject came up as to kind of what some things we're already doing and how does that align with that particular recommendation. So this is the way the recommendation reads in the study. This particular one is the recycling, let's see, recommendation for expanded marketing campaign for recycling and composting specific to the residential. So I just kind of put in the wording here. It's promoting recycling and composting, which specifically, I guess, is more about yard waste, not so much in backyard composting, not so much like food waste collection, through websites, newsletters, mailing, social media, media outreach, direct in-person engagement. And then it lists some ways, community-based social marketing, images and standardized terms. And then it goes on to show that it would include youth education, partnerships with schools, outreach efforts for homeowners associations, multifamily properties, and neighborhoods. So it's kind of, that's how it read. So what I did was take the recycling cart grant, which so far has been announced in the news as far as the fact that we got the cart grant, but a lot of details haven't been shared. We've shared a little bit here and there with you guys. So what I did was kind of make this chart to go through some of the things that are listed in that recommendation and whether, as far as it is included in this cart grant or it's just totally not a part of it at all. So for example, we are going to be promoting recycling through, you know, updating our website. We'll be sending out a lot of information in newsletters, actual mailings, social media, of course. And then I'll have a slide about the community-based social marketing because there's a little bit of parallel there. We are definitely having images on materials that we're trying to standardize between website, mailings, even signs that we have, and same with terms. So trying to keep some consistency. And then outreach efforts to neighborhoods would of course focus on urban services district, but can be there as part of the CART grant. What it doesn't include is yard waste and compost promotion, except for saying that we are doing that every other week with the change of recycling yard waste alternates. And then youth education is not specific to this grant. Partnerships with schools is not. Outreach efforts to HOAs and multifamily properties has nothing to do with this CART grant because those types of homes wouldn't receive the carts. And then the broad marketing campaign for curbside recycling and composting yard waste, we have this recycling message that's focused on the urban services district. And then of course, back to what I said before about composting is really only shared about the every other week schedule. So just so you can kind of see a little bit of what's coming, residents, we are going to do some mailings. Residents who currently recycle in the urban services district with those small 18-gallon bins, they're going to receive a postcard that carts are coming. So that will be, that's mostly just, hey, this is happening. And that's an example of what one might look like in, or what one looked like in another county that did a similar program. Then residents who currently recycle with carts, they're not receiving anything. They're not receiving a cart because they already have one, but we will be mailing a card that reiterates what is accepted in recycling, helps them understand their week that recycling is going to happen, and yard waste would be on opposite weeks. And then it'll call out a particular contamination, which we haven't really decided yet. We're working with West Rock on that to help us decide on what they would, you know, what we consider like our top contaminant, which bagging recyclables is a pretty big one. So anyway, that is, you know, that's gonna help, even though these people maybe already have been recycling, it'll help them see what they should be recycling, what they should not be putting in their bin. And the same information is going to be going on the carts themselves. When the residents get their cart, they'll get a cart packet. So it's going to have some of the same information for them. Of course, we'll use social media to focus on what we want people to recycle, top contaminants, and the new schedule. No one's day is changing, it's just knowing that it's every other week instead. In-person engagement can happen maybe eventually, but it would, even without COVID concerns, it's focused on neighborhoods within the urban services district only. And then this is the part where if you kind of look at community-based social marketing, this is sort of the outline of what you do with that. And so what is happening with this CART grant is that we already identified barriers to recycling, and it's the small bins. So it's it might be a reason that people bag recyclables. It might be a reason that people aren't recycling everything they can. And the strategy itself is this giving carts to people that need them. And then it's kind of like piloting the strategy because we're starting with current recyclers. In the future, we want everyone to have a cart. And then evaluation, we can measure how much is being recycled, and there will be some understanding contamination, which often comes with giving them more capacity, likely means a little bit more contamination. Images, I already mentioned, we're going to try to standardize that as much as we can on everything that we do. I don't know if it's possible to standardize with private haulers or anything like that, but you know, once we kind of have a start of that, maybe it'll make it easier. And then of course, as mentioned, youth education and partnerships with schools. This CART grant really doesn't involve any of that. That doesn't mean that we don't do anything with schools, but it's not really a part of this whole program. Outreach efforts isn't necessarily countywide because we're focusing mostly on the urban services district. That's just, the study itself said resident champion program, and I wasn't really sure what they mean by that. And I've talked to you guys about the Recycle Right program, meaning we have piloted and are continuing to pilot OOPS tags on carts and bins as a way to help contamination. So that's actually a requirement through this grant. So Recycling Partnership was pleased that we were already had a head start because we were already piloting that. But that'll be, they do require you to do some sort of continued education, and however that happens. So this is the same slide I had before, but just to kind of show, you know, I felt for the residential subcommittee, that's what was asked, you know, how does this CART grant align to that particular recommendation? So I think there's a lot that is aligned. I think there's a lot that's not as well. And I think there are some things we could try to push it to be more aligned if we chose to. So that's all I had on that particular one. I was noticing another question about if there's fines for bagging recycling. No, we don't have any fines. We actually just recently changed the ordinance, right, Pete, if you want to reiterate on this one, but made it to where we can actually enforce putting wrong items in, like, in a recycling bin, correct?
Yes, we did pass an ordinance this past fall that referred to a website so that the commodities could be changed over time. So yes, we can cite for improper materials in a recycling container. I would tell you that it would be heavily education based first. And typically the idea there was that the people that are just putting garbage in a recycling container and setting it out there, that's what it would be for. And they just won't correct their situation.
Question. What's going to happen to the old 18-gallon bins?
That's going to be part of the education pack, or the packet of information they get and all on our website and everything, but they can be kept by residents if they want to repurpose the bin, or we'll offer them to recycle them through our drop-off sites, or like our staffed recycling drop-offs, or the waste reduction center will collect them there.
Because it seems to me that there'd be some merit to collecting them and using them in another context where matching nesting bins would be of help. I mean, after all, they are a public asset. And does it, or would, if somebody couldn't get everything in their roll cart, would they be allowed to set it out next to the roll cart with extras?
No, at this point, we're going to be discontinuing the use of bins once that every other week recycling starts. There will be an element of education when it comes to, you know, recycling, same that we tried to do with the bins, but in carts as well, as far as trying to help people understand what to do if you seem to keep filling your cart. You know, there is an element of education when it comes to crushing things, flattening cardboard, and things like that.
Well, I'm just thinking about how we're cutting down pickup, we're cutting it in half. We're providing a bin that's probably on the order of 3 times bigger. But if you have a party, even if you crush the cans and stuff, it seems to me that we ought to let people put out the smaller bin. And if we're not going to do that, is there no better use for the old bins than to just blow them off?
We'll,
I mean,
we'll
is there
continue.
no, I'm
Sarah
looking at
Lynn?
something like, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what Urban Services District is doing, but we're exchanging 1,500 18-gallon bins for 64-gallon toters next week. We put a different truck on that route when we collect the larger can, the recycling can. It will not accommodate both the bin and the larger container. So we would not be able to commingle those. And we're actually going to bring those back and recycle those because we don't have a spot for those. But we have continually done that over the last 5 years. So we're moving toward larger recycling bin. Now, if somebody wants to get a second one, they can. That would be the answer to the question.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
does that make sense?
It does.
Now, I don't know about Urban Services, but that's very typical for all of the haulers in the area. Most of those trucks are what are called automated.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm wondering, for example, does JCPS have a bin inside every classroom? Is there a place where they could use them?
I think that's a good suggestion. I have had schools ask me if we have any extra containers like that for inside the schools. So so that's a good point.
Thank you. I just hate to see them. I mean, that's, again, it's a public asset. I hate to see us lose an opportunity to, I mean, I'm also thinking about, are there some rural communities in Kentucky that would like to start recycling? And that would give them a way to get started without that overhead. Because I believe the city paid $7 a piece way back when, didn't they?
And
They
if I
probably
could,
did.
if I could
And they
add
probably-
something as well. This is Kim, and I'm sorry I don't have my video on. I am concerned about JCPS and the number of containers, especially with the going back to school. They're going to be eating in their classrooms, so they're not going to have that food waste in the cafeteria. So if they don't have a recycling bin in every classroom, where in the past they didn't eat in the room, so it was very easy to just go ahead and deem it recycling, even if a banana peel had gotten there or a Kleenex or something that shouldn't have. But now they are going to be eating in the classroom, and all the food waste will be in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that's a temporary problem. It's a very valid problem. I have a lot of sympathy for it, but it does strike me as a temporary problem if we had a place to store them, or if JCPS had a place to store them for after COVID.
They aren't all usable either.
I know. And some of them are pretty dirty,
Yeah.
and some of them are beat up, but you know, it just seems like, I know Murray, Kentucky is attempting to start some sort of recycling program, and, you know, being able to hand off a few thousand bins might help them get started.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Because reuse is definitely better than recycling.
We should know.
Sarah,
Now
Lynn, I
that's-
can question my daughter this evening whether or not she has a recycling container in her classroom.
Please,
Get that answer for you.
thank you.
All right, anything else for Karen? If not, thank you very much, Karen. Very thorough report. I appreciate it. Did you say Pete has another portion that he would like to review?
Yes.
Yes, Pete. Now, I hope I have all the slides you expected, because we had a couple of presentations. I think that's got a little confused, but is this the first one you expected?
No, you can go past that one.
Okay.
Okay, so I kind of broke things down a little bit different than Karen did. I took in most of my recommendations that, you know, I see as being aligned. In fact, Karen, I am going to switch to my presentation. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. So the first one I kind of want to talk about is in multiple sectors, which is the enhanced enforcement of yard waste disposal ban, ICI, residential, and self-haul. And one of the programs that I think that kind of aligns with this, or at least we're looking into the future as part of how to handle some of this, is the Recycle Right program that Karen mentioned earlier. And the reason that I feel like that it does, let me get this to, is that it would be the mechanism by which that we do education followed by enforcement. And this Recycle Right program is a cart tagging program with a goal to reduce contamination and to educate. And so us doing this and learning how to do this, we would be able to move into, yard waste in the residential stream as another way. It's another form of contamination. So it would be something similar where we're tagging recycle carts, but we can also tag garbage carts that have yard waste in them. So we would have this mechanism already in place through this Recycle Right program. And then obviously it could transfer into a certain amount of, you're going to hit so many front loads or so many other dumpsters every week. Now, obviously, before we move into that, there's going to be a lot more discussion as to how we would do that. But this would kind of be that mechanism to do that. And the end goal here is for us to hire about 4 part-time people to conduct this 3 to 4 days per week, using the education enforcement officer as the lead person on this. And You know, we understand how much money that it could potentially take, and we're ready to make that request at some point to the waste board once we can get through these pilots and we can get our learnings initially. So that's kind of how I feel like that this program can align, what we're doing now can align with that yard waste enforcement. The ordinance is already in place. And the board actually hired that education enforcement officer basically for the yard waste recommendations. Another alignment, I feel like, well, another alignment, I believe, is with the countywide service level standards for self-haul facilities. And we've been talking about this quite a bit already tonight. And that is to provide adequate infrastructure, signage, and stuff. We've already looked at this, but also the recommendation that you have separation requirements for self-haul facilities. So looking at that and understanding that that's going to be a pretty tall order, and we're not even sure that we'll be doing that. We actually, think that conducting the pop-off, drop-off events is very similar because you're targeting self-haul material that you would typically be doing. It's not a established self-haul facility site, but it's the same idea of doing this by events in all three parts of town. So we're not going to get all self-haul, but we're certainly going to get the residential self-haul to come to these events because they are very popular. So these things are created for self-haul materials on an event basis. It requires citizens to separate materials, which is a start towards educating them into the idea of recovery of self-haul waste. You know, a lot of times you put it all on the truck and you take it to the disposal facility, but people need to get into the idea that, hey, a lot of this stuff is recoverable. We already know this through the waste composition studies. And it also allows us to do education with Recycle Coach for other opportunities for self-haul. And, that would be through the what goes where part of that app. So you can, if you want to know where something goes, you type it in there and it's going to show you where it can go, whether it might be disposal, but it's going to prioritize recovery before disposal. That's just what we do. So we feel like that while we're not doing self-haul facilities and creating an infrastructure that is put in place, we feel like that this is a pretty decent substitute, at least for the time being, until we decide what we want to do. Maybe we stick with this instead of doing it at the disposal facilities. But we are targeting that self-haul sector. Another one that has an alignment is the residential countywide service level standards. Carts provided for recycling, standardized bins and labels, and embedded fees. Obviously, we're not doing all of that, but the recycling grant, cart grant, and deployment for the Department of Public Works is one thing that we're doing that's working towards that because, we are giving carts, which is what that recommendation requested. And the Department of Public Works serves a big portion of Jefferson County. So the department moving to that is a big deal. Standardizing the color to a nationally recognized blue for recycling carts, we're not going to get everybody to do that because we know branding, okay? But maybe there's that learning of an emblem or symbol or a sticker, a symbol that can be on everybody's that is recognizable and everybody can keep their branding, but it's just something that people can see and know whether or not they're moving from an unincorporated area with this hauler to the city or to a home rule city or to an HOA with 3 or 4 different haulers. There's always that symbol that means recycling or composting. So that was another way that we felt like that there was some alignment. So those as part of what had been asked on the subcommittees was what have we been doing that kind of aligns with some of these recommendations. And I hope that that summary helps people see that you know, we're trying to do these things within our ability to do so. Obviously, nothing here is mandated. You know, if the committee decides or the board decides that they want to mandate something or they want something else to be done, that's something that they can do. But we're out here trying to prove the concept of these things, or at least do as much as we can do with what we have. So, you know, I felt like that was a good thing to share with everybody. I think you can see that we are trying to do the things that we're asking the committee to discuss. So does anybody have any questions with any of those? Great, that's good.
Pete, how many of those pop-up events are we planning on having? Is it 3 in 3 locations annually?
We're actually going to have 9, 3 in each part of town throughout the year. So,
Okay.
you know, whereas we did have one junk drop-off that was primarily a junk drop-off per year, that we feel like that this is going to be much more popular because we're meeting people closer to where they live. And thus far, we did 3 last year. And we did way more than we had been doing with the previous junk drop-off system. And we had probably about and I don't know this, I'm thinking offhand, but about a 40% recovery rate on that material. Whereas the general recovery rate for self-haul in the study was 7%. So we feel like, you know, we're trying to collect some of these things that we're talking about in self-haul. And the fact is that I think as we move forward, people will be getting the idea of that separation. I think they already are. And that whole concept of, well, this item needs to go to this type of facility. They might not be able to take it to a pop-up drop-off, but now they're thinking, well, this piece of wood can go here, you know, instead of just putting it into disposal. So it's a change of mindset that we're trying to do with these things.
Good. Any other comments from any committee members? Hearing none, I'd like to thank both you, Pete, Karen, for your very thorough and detailed review of our education efforts. Pete, I agree that these pop-up things may at least set a bar, and it may be a solution for what we're talking about with self-haul separation and maybe a training tool. You know, we can look at it a lot of different ways. So I think it ties in nicely.
I have a question. Is the next one scheduled yet, or do we have an idea for the other pop-ups for this year?
Yeah, I was gonna share just a couple things to kind of keep it short for a more staff report, is that we do have our first pop-up drop-off happening this month on March 27th at the Sun Valley Ball Field complex from 10 to 2. And those are gonna happen monthly, and we have the whole schedule. I have not posted the schedule on the website, but I'm going to because it just got finalized. But it basically goes from Southwest to Central to East End, and that keeps repeating 3 times. The Southwest is always at Sun Valley. The Central is always in the parking lot of Metro Fleet Services on Newburgh Road. But the East End, actually, the council wanted us to move it around. So we have one at Eastern High School, one at Fern Creek High School, and one at U of L's Shelby campus, in that order. And so all of that's it's always gonna be on the website for the next date. They're also on the Recycle Coach calendar. They're all posted there. And for at least the first few, we have a truckload of compost bins and rain barrels coming. So we're kind of incorporating a pickup of those at those events. So as people have been purchasing them, this month, the pickup date is March 27th at our event. So I put those both up there because I would appreciate anyone who wants to share I have it on our Facebook pages and stuff too, if you want to, share something that way. But we have both websites. The compost website is so you can purchase rain barrels, compost bins, and accessories. And then, of course, the pop-up website just shares information about the waste event. And Pete already talked about the anti-litter campaign, about our discussions we've had, but I just wanted to not forget to mention that.
Where is it on Facebook? Whose page?
Well, I keep control of No Waste Lou, KNOW, but I also share everything to the Public Works page.
Found
which
it.
has a lot more followers. So
Found it. Thank you.
share everything. Thank you. We would appreciate any sharing.
All right, anything else from any committee member? Is there any public input? We have a wonderful group in attendance today. I don't know if anyone from the public has any input to the committee. Hearing none, I guess the next 109 board meeting is March 24th from 5:30 to 7. Subcommittee meetings, obviously, Tuesday, April 13th for the residential and C&D subcommittee from 2 to 3. And the ICI South Hall is Wednesday, April 21st from 3:15 to 4:15. And the next advisory committee meeting will be Wednesday, April 21st from 4:30 to 6. See. With that, is there any other comments or subjects any committee member wants to bring in front of the group?
My stomach's growling.
Well, it's about supper time. So you get that internal clock working, Sarah Lynn.
Yep.
I do want to thank everyone. It was a great turnout today. Appreciate everyone's time and effort. Adam, thank you again very much for your investigation into the asphalt and your continued work on that. And Pete and Karen, thank you for your leadership. We'll keep doing our best moving forward. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Motion by Sarah Lynn. Do I have a
Second. Second.
By Greg. Second by Greg. Thank you, Greg. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Again, thank you all very much. Please be safe and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.